This is Gerardo Del Real with Resource Stock Digest. Joining me today is the president and CEO of Generation Mining, Mr. Jamie Levy. Jamie, how are you this morning?
I am well. How are you doing? And good morning to you. Everything's great where I am.
Thank you, Jamie. I am well also. It's a different kind of summer this year. The sell in May, go away mantra that is typically followed by those in the resource space is not applicable this year. We definitely have a market, and it's getting tougher and tougher, frankly, to find stories in the resource space that have excellent management, good share structures, still present great value, have scale and the know-how to be able to deliver meaningful catalyst in the near and the midterm. Generation Mining actually checks every single one of those boxes, so I'm excited to help tell this story. Before we get into it, can we talk a bit about your background, Jamie, and then we can talk about the project and the team?
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you. That was a very good intro. My background, I've been president and CEO of Generation Mining for just over a year now. This was a spin out of an older company called Darnley Day, and we acquired a zinc asset in northern Ontario, Northwest Territories called Pine Point. We ended up selling that to a Cisco at the beginning of 2018, and they didn't want to pay us for our exploration assets, so we got a spinco. And once we had that spinco, we worked out a deal to acquire this Marathon Palladium project from Sibanye, which we ended up closing in the beginning of the summer, about a year ago today, was when we closed the acquisition. So my background was Pine Point, at Darnley Day, and before that I was vice president of trading over at Pine Tree Capital and did a bunch of other work for mining companies over the years.
Let's talk about the team just a bit. I can't help but notice that Kerry Knoll is the executive chairman and director. Can you speak to his background? Because it's pretty impressive, and I know he doesn't typically get involved with projects and companies if he doesn't see a meaningful exit strategy. Can you speak to Kerry's experience a bit? And obviously in the future, I would love to have him on and chat with him as well.
First of all, Kerry is a friend. He's a business partner for the past 7 years. He was the one that asked me to become president because the former CEO was getting old. So I came in, and when Kerry told me, like you mentioned earlier, his track record, it wasn't a question of when. It was like right away, I'm ready to go. So he offered me the job, and I'm like, oh my God, your background, your pedigree is amazing. As a horse race lover, you look at his sort of track record, he's pretty good here. So I mean, his background had Glencairn, which ended up getting taken over by B2 Gold. He had Wheaton River, which got spun out into Juicers and Telfer's Gold Corp. His big one was when he got into molybdenum in 2004, a company called Blue Pearl, which I think most people remember had one of the largest RTOs into Thompson Creek, a private company. And so he's just very successful. And his background being, he's not a geologist or an engineer, but his background as a journalist with a Northern Miner, it has really helped in understanding and helping with a lot of stuff that seems to be very pertinent today about some sort of digital marketing and just getting to the information out there. So he's very stellar. Can I go over the rest of the people on the team? Or
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. So yeah, Kerry is our executive chairman. We just hired a chief operating officer. Once we had closed our last financing, Drew Anwell spent about 10 years over at D2 Gold, which is probably one of the biggest open pit mining projects in Canada. He was there from the beginning. He left there around 3-4 years ago. So he has quite the experience. He's starting to do the trade-off studies with us before we start the feasibility study. His background being at Barrick and Plasterdome before that. He's not an old guy, but he's worked a lot, so he seems like an old guy. But his background, everyone we talk to says he's a fabulous guy, and he's just done fabulous work over the past 2-3 months. Hasn't slowed down at all during COVID. He's able to do all he can from his home office, which is great. Our vice president of exploration is Rod Thomas. His background with BHP and Nexa, and his senior exploration geologist, John McBride's been on the project since 2007. He left when it got acquired by Stillwater. Then he went over to Marathon Gold. And he's a young geo, and he loves this project, and he lives up in Marathon, so it definitely helps to have him in there. And a couple other people are notable. Tabitha LeBlanc, she also came over when we acquired the asset from Sibanye Stillwater. She's been on the project since the mid-2000s as well. She's a biologist, but has done all the environmental work and all the relationships with the indigenous groups over the years.
That's an excellent overview. It's a heck of a team. Let's get into the asset because, frankly, it's a heck of an asset, right? The Marathon Palladium project in Northern Ontario is the largest undeveloped palladium deposit in North America, and jurisdiction matters when it comes to palladium. Before we get into the economics, which are pretty substantial for the project, can we talk about what palladium is, how it's used, and why it's important moving forward?
Sure. I'm not a palladium expert, but the palladium market is 85% of the usage is in the auto catalysts for the cars. Palladium is a precious metal. It goes with palladium goes into the loadings, into the catalyst, which reduces the pollution into the environment. It's been mandated in China and Europe to increase the loadings from a gram to 3 or 5 grams in most cars coming up in the next couple of years. Canada and U.S. are already at these stringent sort of requirements. So the demand for palladium, obviously with COVID coming around, the car sales have fallen a little bit. They have increased in China over the past month, and I think Europe is starting to rebound as well. So that's on the demand side for the palladium. On the supply side, it comes out of mostly Norilsk in Russia, South African mines, and then there's 2 mines in North America, the Stillwater mine in Montana, and the Lactazil mine that just got taken over by Impala. So we have 2 South African-owned palladium deposits or owners in North America. We are the only North American-owned palladium, I guess, development story that I know of in North America.
And that's where that jurisdictional advantage is pretty important, right? Because there's not a lot of, quote unquote, friendly sources for this type of project with this type of scale around the world. Would that be accurate, Jamie?
That's very accurate. Canada doesn't really talk about strategic metals, but the U.S. Government has talked about palladium and platinum, or PGMs, being a strategic metal along with some rare earths, so they don't have to rely on supply from Russia, who I believe is still friendly with the U.S. now, but obviously other people are saying otherwise. And South Africa is a friendly country, but they have lots of issues with the unions, and there's lots of issues with the power, never having enough power. So they're sending a lot of people underground. It's very tough to expand mines and to have people underground when the power grid isn't very secure to keep the safety for their employees. So that's why I believe Impala had come up to take over Lactazil in Canada. It's about 300 kilometers away from us for $1 billion at the beginning of this year. And Stillwater, Sibanye bought Stillwater back in, I believe, 2016 or 2017 for their Stillwater mine in Montana. So the supply side, it seems to be the supply of palladium isn't so secure nowadays, as you mentioned.
Let's talk about the project. You have a significant resource. You have impressive economics tied to it. A whole heck of a lot of news moving forward, and we'll get to that in a bit. But tell me a bit about the resource in place. And I understand that most of it is in the measured and indicated category, which of course is a higher confidence category. I believe you acquired a 51% interest, and you have an option to increase it to 80%. Can you explain to me how that works, Jamie?
Sure. Last year, we closed the acquisition from Sibanye, where we gave them $3 million in cash and $3 million in shares. That was Canadian, to purchase 51% ownership in the Marathon Palladium project. So as of that day, we owed 51%. So we were the operators. Over the next 4 years, we have to spend a total of $10 million on the project, not in the ground, just on the project itself, to get to 80%. And once we're at 80%, which we hope we've spent about $4.5 to $5 million of that so far. So we'd hope to be, by the end of the year, to be up at that 80% level.
You got to work immediately on the project. You completed a PEA within 6 months of acquiring it. I know that you've initiated the feasibility study. Tell me a bit about the resource. It's a large project. It's got some platinum, it's got some gold, it's got some copper, which isn't insignificant there. But of course, the main event here is the palladium. Can you tell me a bit about the resource and the numbers from the PEA?
Sure. The numbers in the PEA, I'll get into in a second. I just want to talk about the global resource of the Marathon Palladium deposit. The majority of it is actually coming from the Marathon pit. There's two other periphery deposits called Sally and Geordie. So if I can put the three deposits together, we're just over 3.8 million ounces of palladium, and that's M&I, measured and indicated. Then we have another 1.2 million ounces of platinum, and that's measured and indicated. We have just under 500,000 ounces of gold. We have over 1 billion pounds of copper. And if you were to do a palladium equivalent on that, that puts it to being 8.6 million ounces of palladium measured and indicated. Then we have another 915,000 inferred. So it's a very large global resource. When we were working on our PEA, to answer the other question, we didn't use the whole resource. The two other deposits hadn't been drilled off, the Sally and Geordie, and the Marathon deposit had a total of 180 million tons. We decided to only use 90 million tons within the PEA.
And despite that, you still have some impressive numbers. Can we talk a bit about the after-tax net present value, which I think comes in at approximately, using a 5% discount, about 871 million Canadian. I think if we use recent spot prices, you're somewhere over 1.5 billion Canadian with a ridiculous 45.8% after-tax IRR approximately. You have a market cap, Jamie, of 43 million Canadian approximately. So that's the opportunity here, right?
Yeah, there is a disconnect between our NPV and our market cap. We're at a huge discount to that. We need to keep getting people like yourself and some of your readers or listeners to hear the story, because we're a relatively new company. And I think another issue is a lot of people don't realize that platinum, palladium, they're PGMs, they're part of the precious metal group. They're similar to gold. There's less supply of it than there is gold. Obviously, its usage is used differently than gold is, but we just have to get out there and tell people that, you know, if we were a gold company, we'd be trading at a way higher multiple. So we just have to keep informing people what we're trading at. So yeah, so if we're trading at, you know, 45 million market cap, and even at using the $1,275 palladium price that we had in our PEA, we're still trading at, you know, a big discount to NAV. So we have to keep getting out to telling the story. And when we work on our feasibility study, we're just doing the trade-off studies now. We're probably going to be able to use a higher price, and we're hopeful that the feasibility numbers will be similar, if not better than the PE price.
Let me play Yep.
Sorry,
yep.
go ahead.
No, absolutely. Let me play devil's advocate a bit and ask you all the questions that typically lead to why there's a disconnect in valuation, right? When there's this much of a disparity. How's the infrastructure on the project?
Since we've been interviewing all these consultants to help us out in the feasibility study, everyone has said, oh my God, you guys have done the right thing. You have found a project next to road, next to power, next to a town. That's why our CapEx, we believe, will be a lot less than a lot of the other mining companies that are out there. We're not up on a hill. We don't have to move roads. We don't have to build a town. Everything is all there for us. We're in the town of Marathon, which is about 300 kilometers east of Thunder Bay. It's on the north side of Lake Superior. We have two power lines that connect through the property. Again, we have an airport. There's a road right to the project. There's a town that used to have 5,000 people. Now there's about 3,000 people. There's a big gold mine that I'm sure most readers or listeners know. It's called Hemlo, which is about 30 kilometers to the east of us. And there's mines all around us. So the infrastructure is very good, and that's why we're excited to have this project.
I mentioned the market cap was approximately 43 million Canadian, give or take 44 million today. How's your cash position? Is the market front running you because you're hurting for cash and have to go back to the market sometime soon?
No, we just closed the financing in, I believe it was in February of 2020 for just under $11 million, and we had some cash before, so we're just over $14 million in the bank right now. So we're fully funded. A little exploration program this year, which we'll probably get into, and the completion of the feasibility study. So we think we'll have enough money to last us through to the end of 2021.
So about a third of your market cap is backed by cash.
Correct. Yes.
That's interesting. Let's talk
And just
yeah, go ahead.
And sorry to interrupt. Just to give some of your listeners some of the history of this project. Stillwater had acquired this project from Marathon PGM in 2010 for $118 million US, and that's when palladium was trading around $300-400 an ounce. Today, palladium is trading closer to $1,800. So the price is fourfold from there. And we're basically trading at a quarter of that. So there's a big disconnect between that. If you can make the comparison there, that it's 150 million Canadian, we're trading at 40 million Canadian, and palladium prices have quadrupled since that time.
Let's talk catalyst here. We're in mid-June now. What do you have planned for the second half of the year? I know you just initiated the feasibility study here, the trade-off studies. Can we talk about what to look forward to? You mentioned an exploration program. Walk me through that, Jamie.
The summer plans are, again, we've been doing the trade-off studies. Drew, as mentioned, our chief operating officer, is just finalizing who's going to be doing the tailings and doing some of the engineering work. So we hope to have a press release that very soon for the formal of that. We started to do some flow sheets processing with SGS. We put that in a press release a couple weeks ago. We should be starting our exploration program in the next week or so. And some news will be out on that. We hope to do some drilling, some geophysics as well, but there's going to be constant news flow from metallurgical work. That's double excites some, but maybe not a lot. And we hope to have some drill holes out, and we hope just to be able to update the feasibility study. And, the main catalyst where I think we should get re-rated from shareholders and from analysts will be on the completion of the feasibility study. And as mentioned earlier, we completed the PEA quickly because it was based on 2 feasibility studies in the past. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to get a feasibility study out by the first quarter of 2021. So about 6 to 8 months from today. So I think that's when we'll get re-rated. And if we're trading at a 10% discount to NPV from a PEA, maybe we'll get up to 30 or 50%, is what some analysts have told us that we should be rated at. So. Well, that's where we think that the main will come from, is when we get their feasibility study completed and released.
Jamie, a project of this scale with the infrastructure advantages it has, the economics tied to it that it has, frankly, is screams takeout target. Let's assume that you don't get taken out. You're going to have to raise some capital if you decide you want to build this, right? And obviously you have the team in place to be able to move that forward. Can we talk about some of the shareholders, your key shareholders? Because I know who's on that list, and it's a pretty influential list of people that if the feasibility study just matches what the PEA was able to produce, you're going to have a lot of checkbooks available and at your disposal. Can we talk about some of those shareholders?
Sure, be happy to. Well, I'll start at our newest insider would be Eric Sprott. I think most people know who Eric Sprott is. So he just got involved in it. I don't know if he saw the value in it, or I don't know if he saw what he likes about precious metals. We know he loves precious metals, or what he thought about palladium going into a big deficit. So we got Eric Sprott in. The previous financing and this last financing, we got a Cisco Mining to put money into it. We have some relationships with the management up there. They liked the project. They thought it was a screaming buy, so they put some money into. We've had Zebra Holdings, which is the trust company for the Lucas Lundin's family, and he got in originally as a zinc asset, and he's continued to participate in most of our financings here. So all these guys are 8 to 9% old holders or shareholders, and then we have Sibanye Stillwater. When we took over the project from them as operators, we gave them $3 million in shares in stock, so they're 8.5%, 9% shareholder of the company as well. And if people don't know who Sibanye Stillwater is, they're the largest PGM, I believe the largest platinum producer and the second largest palladium producer in the world. They do almost 4 million ounces of PGMs plus gold a year. So, whether they would take us out or whether they would back in, because they do have a back end rate, we're uncertain. What we're trying to do is we're trying to get the most robust project that's out there. And if the numbers are like what they were in the PEA, we don't see an issue on getting financed, whether the CapEx is $200 million, $600 million, $1 billion. If it's economic, people will give money when you start getting into the 30, 40% IRR numbers. So there's a lot of money out there when you start getting return of capital that high.
Agreed. I want to thank you for your time, Jamie. I want to leave listeners and readers with one last quick point. For those of you out there that hear the word palladium and aren't quite sure what to make of it, I want to just simplify things. Gold currently trades at $17.19 an ounce here in the US. Palladium is trading at $18.59 an ounce. If you just substitute palladium and insert the word gold, there would be approximately 8.66 gold equivalent ounces, again, substituting the palladium and the gold word out, on a project that's got a market cap, or a company that has a market cap right now of approximately 45 million and an NPV after tax Canadian using today's spot prices of approximately 1.5 billion Canadian. It's one of the better stories from a value perspective, and you got the team to get it across the finish line. So just food for thought, people. Anything you want to add to that, Jamie?
No, I appreciate your time, and please have a look at our website. Have a look at our presentation. There's a lot of information that we didn't go over here, including some of the directors. I think we have some really solid directors, from Phil Walford, the old president of this company when it got taken over by Stillwater, to Cashel Meager, who's the chief operating officer over at Hudbay. I mean, we have a very well diverse board of directors that's going to help us take this over the line here. So, we're in the process of, we're completing a feasibility study, but we're actually in the process of building a mine. So we have the team that can build the next palladium PGM deposit in North America. So we're excited. We think it's great times. And, COVID has hurt a lot of people, and it's hurt us as well, but we're able to keep plugging along here and work from our home offices. And the site up in Marathon is going along well. So, we appreciate your time, and please, any questions, email or call me. I'm always around.
Excellent. We'll make sure to put a link up. And you mentioned an exploration program and the catalyst moving forward. So I'll make sure to have you back on if you can make some time for us, Jamie. And we'll talk about community relations, social license. We know how important that is. And I know you've all done some great work on that front. And I want to get into that in a future conversation. Thank you again for your time, Jamie.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Take care.